Mary Claire.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, everybody. Please take your seats if you haven't already. For the final session before our cocktail reception, we will discuss making the most of a candidate-driven market, sponsored by Mintz Levin as well as Puricle. Our moderator is Principal of Princeton Legal Search Group, Mary Claire Garber, with panelists Ethel Badawi, co-founder and principal of Pollock Badawi Group, Lamont Johnson, founding partner at Elm and Broad Recruiting Solutions, and Kimberly Stockinger, CEO of the Sweetbridge Group. Mary Claire, the floor is yours.
Take it away. Take it away. All right, we are the last panel of the day. I have asked Scott and anybody else would like to take a picture of this good-looking panel up here. This is the best-looking panel of the day. Lots of pictures, lots of LinkedIn posts there. And so we shall begin. The topic for this afternoon is making the most of a candidate-driven market. As Mitch had said, my name is Mary Claire Garber, and I'm a principal with Princeton Legal Search Group. Before we get into, and I will be introducing the panel more formally in a moment, let's take a moment to talk about why are we talking about a candidate-driven market. We started the morning with this is very much it was a candidate-driven market. It looks to be, if you will, leveling off some. We saw a tremendous amount of data and statistics around the hiring or hiring bonuses that had been given in up through 2021, and they're seeming to taper off some. We then had a conversation about, is there a recession coming? And if so, what do we do? I challenge you to think about that whether it's a candidate-driven market or a recession-driven market, the same skills, the same processes are going to be contributors to your success. And the esteemed panel here has agreed to share their experiences, their strategies, their successes in a candidate-driven market. So with that, what I would like to do is to begin by introducing the panel. To my left, I'm going to go in order from your right to left, my left to right. Oh, I'm going to get confused with that. I'm going to start with Ethel. Ethel Badawi is our panelist, who is a co-founder and principal of the DC-based Pollock Badawi Group. She partners with law firms on talent searches from associates to partners with law schools, working with deans and director level searches. As a first generation attorney, Ethel is particularly focused on guiding and advising attorneys of color and first generation attorneys to careers where they will flourish. And I don't know if anybody or some of you here may or may not have how much experience you may have with first generation attorneys. That's not easy, and that's a level of complexity that Ethel will be bringing to the conversation. To Ethel's right is Lamont Johnson, who is a founding partner with Elm and Broad Recruiting Solutions, a Philadelphia-based recruiting firm founded in 2018. His primary focus as the firm's lead attorney recruiter is the placement of associate and partner level candidates with clients locally and throughout the country. And so thank you, Lamont. To Lamont's left, I'm trying to do this left, right, and keeping it in the right order. To Lamont's left is Kimberly Stockinger, who is the CEO of the Sweetbridge Group and has been legal recruiting since 2010. Outside of navigating a candidate-driven market, Kimberly focuses on law firm executive placements, law firm merger introductions, opening new markets, and adding practice areas for law firms. Kimberly is from Sioux City.
Oh.
Well, you're not, but you're there now, Sioux Falls. excuse me, Sioux Falls. So there is geographic diversity on our panel as well. So we have what we're trying to do here is to get a national scope, a local scope, law firm, in-house. So we're trying to cover a range of perspectives, both through our panel and in the discussion. My name is Mary Claire Garber. I'm a principal with Princeton Legal Search Group. Princeton Legal Search Group, we focus on in-house law firms and not-for-profits. So I have a different perspective that from time to time I will be bringing to the discussion as well. So let's talk about framing the conversation around why are we here? Why are we talking about a candidate-driven market? Many of us have gone through a wild ride of sorts, up and down and all the way around in terms of 2021, 2022. And I just want to frame the conversation with some statistics. Certainly, again, the data that we had this morning was invaluable in terms of the turnover and the movement, and the statistics that I'm going to share are directly aligned with the statistics shared this morning. So you can't be in this business without having felt the war for legal talent. For many people who have been placed during this period of time, the bonuses are enough money to buy a house in some parts of the US, as we saw on the slide earlier. And two statistics. One is actually from the Chambers report, which is one of our sponsors here. Data from Thomson Reuters reveals that turnover among associates rocketed from 15% to nearly 25% in the last 12 months. At a 3.8% lawyer headcount, growth is the highest it's been since 2008. In particular, there's been huge growth in corporate M&A departments and mid-sized firms, and that's from the Chambers report. So we know that there's high turnover, and we know that there's a lot of movement in the market. The second is that the average associate compensation in the US has risen 11.3% over the past year alone. And some larger firms have offered bonuses up to $64,000. And the statistic this morning was $60,000. So as I said, my statistics are in alignment with the data that was shared this morning. And that is from the Real Economy. So the purpose of this panel is to focus on how do you differentiate yourself in the marketplace, whether it's as a result of turnover, whether it's as a result of people leaving for bonuses, if it's a result of growth. There is tremendous amount of activity in many of the markets. Some of them may have quieted down, still some might be more active than others. So the panel has agreed to talk about how do you differentiate yourself, what makes us as a NALSC member, what makes us as an individual company different from one recruiter to another. So we are going to be addressing 3 questions, and they are going to be in the areas of candidate engagement, candidate management, and alternative strategies that may have been deployed during this period of time of a candidate-driven market. And so I'm going to open it up to the panel, and we're going to start with candidate engagement. This notion, this issue of where and how do you find candidates, and once you find a candidate, how do you begin to engage with them? So the question is, in a candidate-driven market where many recruiters are soliciting candidates, what are some of your success techniques for engaging with candidates? In other words, how do you get them not to hang up on you and or to return a call? And equally as important, how do you invite them into the conversation? And Kimberly, we're going to start with you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mary Claire. I think one of the things that I do, I'm old school. I'm 48 years old. I used to be in finance, and I remember being approached by recruiters all the time and hanging up on them promptly. But what did stand out in what I do, my old school approach, is I feel like people today, they want to have meaningful relationships and not feel like they're a product or a commodity. So when I get somebody engaged, I try not to make them seem like they're a commodity or a product, and really figure out what it is that their life goals are, and go from there.
Thank you. And Lamont?
I guess just expound on that is, when you're calling somebody, and my big thing is it's a people-driven business, right? We're all interacting with people on multiple levels. The most important thing is, I think, in any walk is empathy, right? I'm calling this person random, calling, emailing, LinkedIn, whatever it may be. So I use any method I have at my disposal to try to get in contact with somebody, which I think we all do. And then I also think about, this person is at their place of employment. They may be happy, they may not be expecting me to reach out. I need to empathize and understand that, I'm randomly reaching out to this person. So I need to try to build a connection in the best way possible, but also understand where they are and meet them where they are. And that's my biggest, what I try to do when I'm connecting to a candidate.
Thank you. And Ethel?
Well, I'll just take a slightly different tack than calling or LinkedIn, because I have a wide network of people who've never been to law school, who've never stepped into a law firm. My engagement, I think, starts pretty early. I try to catch attorneys who are either very early in their cycle, so finishing law school, or if for my partner candidates, I reach out to other first-generation partners, other first-generation attorneys, and that's often through affinity bar associations or referral candidates that I know. I actually keep in touch with a lot of law school faculty to get referrals for people who need a little coaching. And I think part of the initial engagement there is not necessarily, hey, I have this job, do you want to move? It is just, hey, are you happy? What obstacles do you have? And how can I help you either stay, which is not always my personal incentive, but to show them that I understand what struggles they might be facing and that I'm a partner in their longer term career development rather than just a immediate move to the next platform.
Thank you. And from an in-house perspective, and this certainly could apply whether it's in-house or on the law firm side, I don't have a strategy for getting somebody to pick up the phone. But when we do have a candidate on the phone to help get the next person on the phone, we have a process or a technique, we call it a referral, but we never use that word on the phone. So if I were hypothetically going to be giving Ethel a call and she says, thanks, but no thanks, I'm getting, it's bonus season, right? So there's not a lot of movement right now because of bonus season. So I say, all right, I understand where you're at. Thank you very much. Might there be someone in your network that you care about? Might there be somebody that you think about or care about who might be interested in this opportunity? Because what we have found is to say, Ethel, do you have a referral? It feels like I'm calling her for the referral, and it doesn't, and it hurts what I believe is it hurts my relationship with the candidate, in this case, Ethel. So what we do is to make the phone call, and if we can engage with the candidate, and if that candidate's not interested, again, it's asking for the referral without ever using, we call it the R word. So that's one of the techniques that we use. And that helps tremendously, because if I'm going to call Lamont and I say, Lamont, Ethel gave me your name and number as somebody who may be interested in an opportunity, do you have a couple of minutes? Lamont, you're more likely to take my call if I have Ethel's referral and you and Ethel are connected, right? So that's going to help me with the next call. It may not help me with the first call, but it's certainly going to help generate additional calls. So great.
I just want to supplement quickly on the bonus issue. I recently was on a call with a candidate who was like, oh, I'm not looking, I'm waiting for my bonus. I'll be looking in January. And I sort of took that moment to educate them and say, this isn't OCI. This isn't going to happen in 2 weeks, right? Yeah. So even if you're looking to collect your bonus, yes, but your timeline is January, February, March, we should be having the conversation now or even earlier. And I think especially with junior attorneys, they don't know that. Like if they've never made a move, if this is their first or second move, and sometimes their first move happened really quickly. So part of it is just sort of educating them. And that sort of keeps you on the phone and it's an education process.
To the panel, does anybody send anything out like an email or a LinkedIn invite? Is your methodology to call first or send either LinkedIn invite or some other form of introduction first? Call or email or LinkedIn first?
Yes.
I would say I like the email, LinkedIn approach first, try to warm up. And if it's cold, if it's going to be cold, it's cold, that's fine. But I'd like to send something first to kind of give them an idea, like I'm looking, I'm going to reach out and then go from there. But I do both, I do it all. So.
Great. And Kimberly?
Same with Lamont. I feel like I send the email first because I started my career calling all the time and now I have my own business. So I don't have to do that. But I email, and then the ones that I really want to follow, I email them again and again, sometimes a third time. In sales, they say sometimes you have to contact somebody 4 or 5 times before you get even the engagement. And that applies in recruiting too.
How long do you wait in between your?
A week, 2 weeks. Like I'm following up on the email I sent you last week, because then they're going to feel like you did specifically target them. I feel like.
So I would say also for our law firm partners here, I often get new searches and then they'll call me in 2 weeks and be like, what did you get? So, a part of that as a recruiter is exactly what Kim is saying, is educating them and saying, hey, it might take me 3 or 4 tries and I can't call them 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
Great. Liz, did you have a question?
I'm curious
Yeah.
to that question,
Uh-huh.
whether it changed since COVID, because people weren't in their office, or you always email, maybe you work at COVID. As your first contact,
I always email.
you did.
I actually start calling more now because of COVID, because people are at home. So they're more likely to pick up the phone at home and more likely to engage in a conversation when they don't have thin walls between them.
Great, thank you. Any other questions before we move on to the next topic, which is candidate management? But any questions from the audience on candidate engagement? All right, so let's move along to candidate management. Once you've engaged the client and the candidate, so you have a client who is either looking or you have a candidate that you're bringing to the marketplace. Tell us key strategies about the process of candidate management. Any insights or techniques that you're willing to share with us? And Lamont, we'll start with you.
Just going back to the empathy part and kind of playing on what you talked about, when they get a candidate that is engaged, I think the most important thing is, first of all, and what I learned is, this is like one of the first things Sean and I learned from Jill Ankes, is setting expectations. This is what we are capable of doing. This is what we're looking to do. This is what we expect to happen, but that could change. We like to set candidate expectations early on. We also like to set expectations that will be as transparent as possible, right? I mean, it can be difficult, but we want to keep you in the loop at all moments, at all times, if something's going on. We're all busy, but we want to treat them as if we were being treated as a candidate, and walk them through the process, and then with the mindset of, like, even if this person, and then the other part is, listen, finding out exactly why they're thinking about making a change and why this particular opportunity could or could not be a fit, and really fishing that out, right? The last thing you want to do is get to the last moment and they realize this is not what I'm looking for. So transparency, and then setting expectations with the mindset of, like, this interaction is something that could last for the next 15, 20 years of my career. So whether I move this person or not, this person is going to look at me as somebody they can trust and build a relationship upon. So.
Thank you. And Kimberly?
Everything Lamont just said. And for me, in this time, I'd like to let the firm know that time kills deals. So if we have a candidate on the line that you really, really want, you're going to need to stay on the path of the time frame that it takes, because time can kill deals. I've had firms that had unrealistic idea that these candidates were going to be in this candidate-driven market, especially that these candidates were going to be around for a month or 2 months, and that just wasn't the case. And so that's one of the first things I learned in recruiting, that time kills deals. And then on the firm level, when I'm talking, or excuse me, on the candidate level, you need to stay connected with the candidates. I've told a couple people stories now where I even had a CFO at a law firm get an offer, accept it, and then left that offer for something else. And then wanted to come back and see if that offer was still available. And before he came back to see if the offer was still available, he emailed the firm and said, I just don't want to work this hard anymore in my life, at this stage in my life. And then he still tried, and I tried, because we're recruiters. I tried to get it back together, but I felt like it was my, what was that?
He was drinking.
Yeah. I felt like it was my fault because I took it for granted. I thought it was a done deal. Who would turn that? That's everything he wanted. It was everything that he wanted. Who would do that? So I dropped the ball there. I should have stayed connected with him until the start date. How often does that happen to you guys where deals come apart after they've accepted an offer?
Yeah.
Like all the time or especially lately? More recently? That's wild. And I think that's probably, the client-driven market environment that we were in. Hopefully.
All right, I'll tell you what, let's come to Ethel, and then I'm going to open it up to questions around the candidate management. After each section, we'll stop and take questions. So Ethel, your insights, observations on the candidate management process.
I mean, I have to agree with my colleagues, Lamont and Kim up here. Just a different tack is that we at our firm try to meet every single candidate that we are working with in person, which is oftentimes we have clients that say, well, do you work in other markets? And I always say, well, really it's Washington, DC, because I like to try to meet everyone in person, especially now that it's possible. And I think that can really set us apart for clients because they know that we're vetting them at a level with some more depth, and then also with the candidates. The other thing is understanding where your candidates are, right? So we have recruiters that really focus on junior attorney hiring. I think their entire relationship is on text message. And then if I were to have my entire partner relationship on a text message, I'm sure that they would get rid of me in like 2 weeks. So understanding what their communication preferences are, and also how often you need to communicate with them. So some candidates like to be really hands-on, and understanding that. So we can get into our routines and our cadence and we know what's happening, but some candidates they just need their higher touch, right? And so making sure that I'm clear with them and what their needs are, and then communicating in the way that they want to be communicated with is one way that I try to keep them engaged.
Thank you. And at Princeton Legal Search Group, we take on a couple of strategies around candidate management. The first one is that before they move into what's called, we refer to as a deeper dive interview, they have met with 3 people. So now they're into about the 4th interview. When they're qualified to be presented to a company, we do a candidate checklist, and we make sure that they understand, hey, I'm going to need to be meeting with you to prep you for the rounds of interviews. And we're also going to be needing to debrief with you post interviews. Are you okay with that? I'm getting their pre-permission up front to give them a call so that there isn't any, I didn't know it was going to be this many phone calls or this many meetings. I'm asking them up front, do I have your permission to prep you for the interviews, to debrief with you? And if it's not me, somebody else in the company. So that's one way that's the second way that we manage candidates. And the third way is that every time a candidate goes on an interview, they do debrief with us. Now, that does not mean every single interview, because sometimes there are rounds of interviews, right? So in round 1, there might be 3 people. In round 2, there's 3 people. Round 3, there's 3 people. I'm not debriefing 9 times. I'm debriefing 3 times, 3, for each round, however many people were in that round. And that certainly allows us to be in touch with candidates. And then the last strategy that we use is to invite people to excuse themselves from the process at any point. On a scale of 1 to 10, where does your interest lie? Has anything changed since we last spoke? Is this the right opportunity for you? And if it's not, that's okay. It's okay for you to excuse yourself now, and we remain professional acquaintances. I don't want it to happen in the 11th hour, or I don't want it to happen in the 12th hour. I'll take it in the 10th hour where I can manage it better than in the 11th or 12th hour. So those are some of the strategies that we use. And then I think I saw a couple of hands come up. Were there questions or comments to candidate management? Okay. All right, so we're gonna move it, yep, yes, yes.
The candidate address is law firm. External recruiters. The people who drive us crazy are the ones who are like in, out, in, out. And then they've got a huge book. All the columns will be so big. And you never kick them to the curb, right? Because you just never. So what do y'all do with those? I mean, I can hear the beginning. Yeah, and they keep. Whether to cut them loose. Yes, I wonder the same things.
So the question was,
Yes.
if you have
Okay,
a really
thank you.
great candidate, but they're not quite ready or never seem like they're ever gonna be ready to make a move, how do you keep them in?
When they stop interviewing, do they want to interview again and then back and forth?
Right, so they're in it, they're in talks and they pause it, then they go back and you know that there's gonna be someone that will always take them because they're a great candidate. Do you,
That's the story of my biggest deals. It feels like that's the way it always happens with them. And it's, explaining to the firm that, well, they've got these things going on or this, I mean, I think we all know things happen, cases happen and things like that.
I don't give up.
Yeah.
I definitely
It's hard.
keep in touch. I mean, I think it has to be the candidate that has that high value where I know that it's going to be worth the investment to do it. And if it is, then we keep in touch, and we haven't been in existence for that long, but it has taken years. And we keep going. And yeah,
You gotta.
we check in at the end of the year, definitely.
I would just say, and also the relationship with the firm and being able to be transparent with them and tell them exactly, what you're seeing on your side with your candidate and understanding like, look, this is a great candidate, but this might not be the right time. But if your relationship's strong with your firm, I think you can go to them and have those real conversations and they'll understand that. And that allows you to continue that relationship with your candidate and the firm and everybody knows where everybody's standing.
Great, thank you. David?
Curious about how you go about avoiding surprises, right? So in this market, many of us have found that the best people have multiple options, right? And so curious as to how, if you have some understanding with your candidates about what else they may have in front of them and where it's at, are they being open with you? How do you get them? Are you getting them to do that? And how have you gotten them to do that so that you're not surprised and so that your deal doesn't go south?
I always find out in the beginning, it's part of the engagement process for me. And I always ask, are you working with any other recruiters? Are you talking to any other firms? And I do that out the gate and they say, we just really need to stay communicating about that. Personally, that's what I do.
Same for me, upfront early on, having that conversation and then just expressing to them what could go wrong if there's not transparency on both sides and just begging them, listen, just be honest with me. It's okay. And empathizing in the sense of like, I understand you're looking for what's best for you and maybe I'm not that, but it's okay to explore it, but please just let's be honest with each other from start to finish. And then you still can't avoid all surprises, right? They're going to
I was
come.
just going to say that, David, I feel like you talked about surprises. Even when you do that, you still can be surprised for sure.
I think also, not just asking at the beginning, but asking throughout. And I also ask the question of the client, of the law firm I'm working with, how many other candidates are you looking at? Are you far along? What do you think your timing is going to be? Because then if I can reciprocate that information to my candidate, then it's a little bit easier for them to feel like they have to give me the same reciprocal information. But we had a deal fall apart this year that was terrible, so it doesn't always work.
Great, anyone else? Yes, oh, I saw a hand go up in the back. Yeah.
I'm pretty all engaging, and I think one thing I bet most recruiters would say is a little tough to get a voice heard. So are there any specific examples found successful in leaving a voicemail and getting a return call.
Great. Let me just repeat the question please let me, I don't know. No, wait, let me, I will repeat the question best that I can. The question is, are there any tips, strategies, techniques for voicemail messages that get callbacks more than others? Has anybody experienced on the panel a voicemail strategy or a voicemail message for getting callbacks? Ethel?
When I've gotten callbacks, which, isn't that frequent, let's be honest. When I do get callbacks, it's a couple things that I've gotten feedback on. One, it's that I've mentioned something in the candidate's profile that is specific to them. So they'll say, ooh, it sounds like you've done your research. You knew that I was in-house before I came to this law firm, right? So something more than just like the 3 sentences on the law firm profile. Or alternatively, I've looked and there's some other connection I have made. So I went to Wellesley College. And so whenever I see anyone that went to Wellesley, I say, I see that you went to Wellesley. I did there too. And if any of you know anyone from Wellesley, it is slightly cultish in terms of the alumni association. So I usually get a call back, even if people are not interested, they'll be like, oh, I never return recruiter calls, but since we should share the same college, I'm calling you back.
Great. So a little pressure, through the alumni association, that works. Making a connection on their LinkedIn profile.
I said I don't do calls anymore, but I just recalled the message I used to leave, and I'll tell you all because I don't leave messages anymore. You guys can have it. But I feel like what I used to say was, this is Kimberly calling. I just wanted to have a quick confidential conversation with you about an opportunity. And I used to get calls back all the time. If I don't give them much more than that, they're going to be like, what's she talking like a secret? I know.
That's right.
You got to keep them.
That's right, yeah. So one of the messages that we leave that will get callbacks is that it's similar to what Ethel is saying, but slightly different. So we'll give you a couple different suggestions, and we get callbacks on this one. We're working on a really interesting in-house opportunity, whether it's M&A that resonates with your background, Ross, and I'll make a connection, your background. I really think you want to give me a call back on this one.
Yeah.
And that will usually get a call. Nothing is guaranteed, right? But that's one that works in terms of generating more callbacks than others. Anyone else from the panel?
I would say I have not gotten callbacks from a voicemail. Generally, what I've found is a voicemail and then an email follow-up has gotten good responses.
The 1 2.
Yes. So, hey, I left your voicemail. I wanted to follow up. Hey, I got your voicemail. I'm interested. Can we set up a call? I think that's been the most fruitful for me as far as the voicemail. And when I do leave a voicemail, I try to kind of not as much of the connection, but at least let them know that I'm not just randomly calling them without knowing what their practice is or where they are and what they're doing. They at least need to know I did my research. And then the email or the LinkedIn follow-up usually has been successful.
Great. And I think there may have been another question in the back. Was there another question around candidate management? On this side, going once, going twice. Okay. Great. Well, thank you for answering the questions on candidate engagement and candidate management. We're now going to move into the third area, topic of the conversation, which is alternative strategies. As was presented to us this morning, in times of significant change, as we've gone through with the pandemic, the war for legal talent, those two changes certainly have been pressing on all of us. In times of pressure, good things can come out of change and pressure or pressure to change. What, to the panel, are some of the strategies that you developed, found, perfected during the time of the war, the managing in a candidate-driven market? And Ethel, we'll start with you.
So I alluded to this a little earlier, but I do engage a lot with the affinity bar associations in Washington, D.C. to really target diverse candidates and first generation candidates. And I've really tried to reach attorneys sort of in all phases of their career through the local bar associations. So that's one way. The other thing that I do is I actually use my personal LinkedIn, so I know a lot of us might use our firm LinkedIn to have job postings and things, but every once in a while, I do try to follow this like 80-20 rule that they sometimes say for social media. I'll do nothing else except say, I'm working on this specific search and put some details in it on my own LinkedIn account that does not actually link to a job posting or anything else. It's just sort of my message for the day. And it must be a LinkedIn algorithm because I get more hits when I do that. So I use it sparingly, but I do get more than when I link to a job posting on our own company website.
Thank you. And Kimberly.
Well, like Mary Claire said, I'm from Sioux Falls,
Yeah.
and interestingly enough, I think I'm a walking alternative strategy when it comes to, I don't get to go out and meet with people or things like that. And the funny story I was saying before, that when the band comes to Sioux Falls and they accidentally say, "Hello, Sioux City," everybody boos, and because they're the ugly stepsister south of us. But my significant other, life partner, 14 years, is a retired family lawyer. And I know that's looked on as the mutt of practices at law firms, but not if you are representing the top in every state that you live in, which he does. And he belongs to a national organization of the top family lawyers in the world. These are the people that represent Google and the movie Kramer versus Kramer was after and things like that. These are my clients. So I have a secret niche where I work in family law, so call me. But what's interesting about that is, so I was telling Stephanie about this, about how when we're talking about alternative strategies, I said, we need to really think inside the box. I was working on a family law position that needed to be filled, and I saw this resume that I normally would have passed on because it spelled serial hopper. We pass on those normally. But in this candidate-driven market, I was starting to get really freaked out because I wasn't getting this position filled. And I don't know about you guys, but I start to panic and I'm not getting this filled. So I said, I need to think inside the box. And I did a deeper dive into the resumes I had on my plate, and the ones that I normally would have passed on, the cliche passes of the past, as I called them. And I found a girl who was absolutely perfect. I just did a little bit more of a deep dive, and I sent the resume as was. I didn't change it as I should have. But I sent it as was to the candidate or client, and I said, just trust me on this. I was almost willing to I was willing to do all kinds of things for them to just have a conversation with this girl and this professional attorney. And they finally agreed. And then he writes me immediately and says, thank you so much. This is why we hired you. This is why we know what you know what you're doing. You were right. It wasn't the resume, but it was talking to her. So my recommendation is think inside the box.
And Lamont.
Look inside the box.
Two things. One, I really love this industry, right? I love this job. So any chance I get to tell somebody what I do, that's what I do. So if I'm at pickleball, Orange Theory, wherever I'm at, I'm having dialogue. And I mean, I try to do it organically, right? But I'm having dialogue with people about what I do and what I like to do. And I've had referrals from somebody's cousin's cousin to say, hey, I know somebody, and I have an interaction. And so that's what I like to hold myself out and who I am and talk to people about that wherever I am. The other thing is kind of piggybacking on what Ethel was talking about is, I went to law school and 08 graduate Lamont, I guarantee you no recruiter in this room would have even looked twice at me, and for good reasons, right? And listen, I'm being honest, really good reasons. Not only just a year, just Lamont, I wasn't prepared to be an attorney. And so what I try to do is when I have an opportunity to talk to attorneys who I know I can't place, or people who I know are not necessarily, firm material in the sense of they're going to pay me to bring them to them, I try to spend time with them and be the person that I wish I had at that time to help them in their career. And I will tell you, I think that's been one of the more powerful things in our 4 years is it's just actually sitting down with somebody and say, hey, listen, I know for a fact a firm is not going to pay me to bring you to them. But these are the things that I think you're lacking on, that I think you can improve on. These are the things that I think might help. This is the alternative strategy. And you know, that person has a friend from law school who I can place, or a uncle who's a partner. And that has been very powerful. And I know we're all busy, but if you take that time, I feel like that's been really good for me as far as my people knowing, like, look, he genuinely cares about us as, individuals. So,
I told Lamont that's his pro bono work,
yes.
pro bono.
And Ethel,
I do pretty much the same thing. Just to piggyback on what Lamont was saying, I started a job search group for junior attorneys. That was a brown bag session. I did this when I had nothing better to do in April of 2020. And it was interesting, I obviously got candidates that I was not going to be able to place, but it was very much in the line of what Lamont was saying. And I used to be a career counselor at a law school, so it comes naturally to me. And so, but from that, I have gotten referrals from their peers, right? So I think thinking outside, I think what I struggle with as a recruiter is that I hear from seasoned recruiters that you should be really smart with your time, work smart. And there's this, I don't know that I have the answer to what that balance is, because I spend a lot of time talking to candidates that I know I can't help. And it's probably not the best use of my time, but I'm trying to think of that as an investment.
It is. And you get paid.
well, thank you very much to our panel, Ethel, Lamont, and Kimberly. A round of applause to the panel. And I just want to take one last moment to thank all of our sponsors that have been here today. Without the sponsors, we wouldn't be here. So thank you to the sponsors as well.
Well, thank you again, Mary Claire, Ethel, Lamont, Kimberly. Great to meet you all in person too, and all of you. And now we get to drink with you in person. So join us for the networking cocktail reception. It's sponsored by ALM Jobs and ALM Intelligence. It is on the rooftop solarium and West Terrace. Okay? And I hear it's a beautiful day outside. So let's have some fun. It's time to imbibe.